Good afternoon, everybody. Could I just ask you, if you haven't done so, to put your system on mute? Thank you. Well, good afternoon and welcome to this staff open meeting. There's still colleagues joining us, but we'll get started. So if we can just go to the agenda on the screen, please. What we're going to do today is to largely talk about the people strategy and how we're going to develop that. And a lot of the session will be presented by colleagues from HR. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a quick update on a couple of issues. So if we could just go to the next slide. So colleagues will be aware that the university's ministers made an announcement about more activity on campus and students coming back to the campus to take up the facilities that we will have open. And a lot of that is based on the 17th of May as the key date. Of course, all our students are getting their education either on campus already because they've been in certain practical based subjects, or they're getting it online. Sorry, I'm just muting people there. Students are getting face-to-face teaching or online, and of course assessments are largely online. So all of that will happen as planned. But of course many students are missing the social engagement and other activities. So come the 17th of May, there'll be a range of things that will be on offer to support our students in their last couple of weeks before the end of the academic year. So that's happening. As always, testing continues in our testing centre here on campus, and we're getting some good flow through, but we will be encouraging all students who are in the area, whether they're living on campus or locally, to take advantage of the testing. I think we've got a little incentive scheme that we're setting up for that. And the government has announced that they are moving towards self-testing for all of us. As members of the public, any of us can order self-test kits online, but they are making arrangements for universities to be able to supply these directly on a sort of collect basis, particularly for students, but I think it'd be open to all of us. As we hopefully move beyond the pandemic, the government agenda is hotting up. There were a number of things in the 2019 Conservative Manifesto about universities, around funding, around low value degrees, around freedom of speech on campus. These are all things that the government are particularly interested in. Of course, we've been pretty much stuck with a flat undergraduate home student fee, just over £9,000 for a good number of years. And of course, that does create challenges for all universities. But as we go forward, I think the Treasury is concerned about the amount of money going into higher education, particularly with a growing student population. So I think there are initiatives that are going to be coming forward that we're going to need to think carefully about. But none of this really affects our overall strategy. The strategy is about making us sort of fit for the future, and as these various things come in our direction, we can then be in a good position to respond to them. Planning for next academic year is going on. In fact, I was involved in a call this morning with Kevin Collins, the education czar that is working with schools to try and address some of the education deficit that students have had. His thinking is that students, and particularly those that will be coming through into the university system, will have lost something like 4 months education over the course of the pandemic. And that's a pretty significant chunk of education that will be missing. And one of the things we'll need to be doing is just thinking about how we plan for student arrivals and induction and transition. But it is something that will have to go on throughout the year. And I think one of the things we've learned from the pandemic is the really important role that personal tutors and the personal touch can play in giving students the confidence to embrace their studies and succeed. And then just finally, it would be remiss of me not to, first of all, thank everybody who's participated and contributed towards making our submission for the REF, the Research Excellence Framework submission. That went in just a couple of weeks ago, and we will be getting the results of that in spring next year, 2022. But thank you particularly to the team that helped make sure that we got everything in place to make the submission by the due date. Of course, the whole thing was a bit delayed because of the pandemic and the deadlines were extended, but big thank you to them. So that's it on updates. We're going to go on now to the people strategy. So if we could go on to the next main slide. And I'm just going to introduce the 3-year strategic plan, and then I'll pass over to Helen Ellis-Jones, the Director of HR, to talk us through the development of the people strategy. So the way to read this slide, and it's a sort of strategy on a page, is you begin at the top and work down. And the first 2 boxes at the top really set the historical context for our strategy. And interestingly, what was as true in 1883 is as true today. Our purpose and what we're here to do, education of students, using the appropriate methods, challenging them intellectually and socially. I say that was as true in the 19th century as it is today in the 21st. And the really key point to make is, Thomas Holloway's sort of foresight was about aligning those things to the needs of the day. And so when we talk about change within this institution, it is about aligning what we do to the needs of our students, of our researchers, our funders, of society as a whole. And so we go through a constant process of change as we align our teaching programs, as we revise the content, as we embrace new research ideas and techniques. And as we go into the next 3 years, bearing in mind we've coming out of a difficult period of the pandemic, we're wanting to focus on 3 key themes. Those are the strategic pillars, and you can see them in the next line down. The first of these pillars is to respond to the fact that the number of students is going to grow over the next decade, and particularly in London. And those students will be, they reflect very much our student population at the moment. We have a big intake from particularly the west of London, but that's going to grow. And many of those students are actually commuting students rather than students who live in our residences. So there's a bunch of needs that will come around supporting those students and giving them an equal experience to those students who choose to join us on campus. The second thing is we need to ensure that we get a good mix of international students. We've seen some real turbulence in this area. Far fewer students from China, a lot more from India, because the whole travel ban is causing continued difficulties in this space. But we want to recruit the best students from around the world, and part of that is about having really good international partners. So that's the second pillar there. And then the third pillar relates to our research and to continue to develop what we've called challenge-led research. It's important that we have strong underlying academic disciplines, but the work of those disciplines then need to come together, often in multidisciplinary teams, to tackle some of the world's big problems. So those are our 3 academic pillars. And then there's a fourth one, and it's the one that's underneath it, that says managing resources effectively and efficiently to ensure a financial sustainable future. That's the fourth pillar, and that's how do we support those. How do we support our academic activities with at the end of the day, limited resource? How can we use that resource wisely and to best effect? So those are in the end, the 4 pillars of the academic strategy. The 2 other things that we need for our strategy is, first of all, a people strategy. We're going to talk about that today. And then we're also committed to having a strategy which is about environmental sustainability, and particularly this year with the COP conference in Glasgow. It'll be very much in the public mind and public eye. The government itself has announced some ambitious targets for the country as a whole, about going carbon neutral, and they will cascade down into the university sector. But we want to be ahead of that game and think about our own environmental priorities, and that work will go on in parallel to the people strategy. More of that on another occasion. So we're now going to focus on the people strategy. At the end of the session, we'll have some opportunity to answer, to have questions and answers. So if you've got questions, maybe you could pop them in the chat, and then I'll go through those at the end. So with that, I'm going to now pass over to Helen, who's going to take us through the development of the people strategy. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Paul. And for those of you who haven't seen before or who haven't seen me, I'm Helen Ellis-Jones, as Paul said, joined as HR Director just over a year ago. So just wanted to pick up, the people strategy really recognises the critical role that we all as the people here in the institution play in delivering the strategic plan that Paul's just outlined. And I think it's a really good sign of the dedication to that we've got the whole session virtually covering off the people strategy. So thank you, Paul, for all of this time. There's two elements to the people strategy. One will be looking at how we work and how we work together. That's reflected in that overlapping part in the middle of those circles. And that's important for how we support the delivery of the strategic plan. It's our part in helping the college to succeed. But what's important, and maybe reflected more in the far right-hand side of the people strategy, is it's about our employment experience as well. It's asking ourselves the question about how do we make Royal Holloway a great place to work, where we want to come to work, where we want to give of our best, and we feel proud to be an employee here. So that's how the people strategy will come together. It's trying to address those two elements of how we work together to support delivery of the strategic plan, but how we make ourselves a great place to work. If we can move to the next slide then, please. So the people strategy will be very much focused on trying to create that culture and that environment that is characterised by a number of things, whether they're values, that it's nurturing and develops, it builds confidence, it creates challenges and challenges us, supports us and recognises us when we're succeeding. And in trying to bring those things together, it will hopefully conclude that the people's success, so our own individual successes, will help the college to succeed, and vice versa, that the college's successes will enable us to succeed. So the people strategy is trying to bring all of these elements together. What we're really keen to do is ensure that the people strategy reflects and is informed by your voices and your opinions, and I'm going to hand over to Ellie now to talk you through in more detail two key threads of work that we're doing to capture the voices and the views of a wider range of staff. So Ellie, could I hand over to you, and could we move to the next slide then, please?
Thank you, Helen. Yes, I'm Ellie Rayners, Head of Organisational Development and Diversity, and we'll be supporting the development of the people strategy. So as Helen says, it's really important that we understand the various views across the college of what goes into making the people strategy for the future. And what we've done to try and elicit this from you is put together a framework of things that we feel are important in positive working cultures, through looking at sort of what is written externally and are generally thought to be good, strong things in the external world. So I'm going to just talk you through this framework of 6 things first, just to give you a flavour of what we mean by this. So initially, one of the features that we see in strong positive working cultures is that people have a strong sense of the organisation's purpose, what it's there to do, and feel a sense of connection to that purpose and an understanding of the role that people play within it. And you find that people, sometimes they need a very specific purpose, sometimes they're happy with something which feels very general. And what we're aiming to do really is to understand just how important this is to you. It is something that's been commented on in staff surveys in the past. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into to shaping this through the college strategy, particularly within the last year. And we're keen to understand where you are on this now, and how strong a feature you feel it should be part of the people strategy. So the second element is opportunity. So this is where people feel that sense of having the ability to grow within their roles, to develop, but also to be heard and to be involved. So if you're working for an organisation where you really feel a strong sense of its purpose and you want to contribute to it, it's good to feel that you're also involved in that and you're heard as part of it. Opportunity means so many different things to different people. It could be that what you want is progression, promotion. It could also be that what you want is but what you want is interesting work to do and things that stretch and challenge you in different ways, both equally important in the way that people see opportunity. So we'd like to see how you see it. The third thing is success. And this is success from the point of view of individuals and teams. And not just that it's achieved, but also that it's encouraged within our culture. People are encouraged to succeed and their success is celebrated. And crucially, that people feel supported along the way to achieve that success. And the fourth element is appreciation. So this is people feeling acknowledged and valued for what they do in terms of the work, but also crucially who they are, so that people feel a sense of belonging within the overall organisation for their talents and what they bring. And again, appreciation is something that people feel very differently about how they like to be appreciated. That's something we'd like to understand from you too. And then we have well-being. So this obviously is a subject which has become really front and centre since the pandemic, but was very much an important element before. So we've described it as having the sense of belonging within the organisation, but also critically a sense of balance between work and personal life and the support that you get with your well-being. We're really keen to understand what well-being means to you and the kind of focus that should be put on it within the people strategy. And the final element we feel is a feature of the positive working culture is leadership. Leadership that perhaps inspires confidence in trust as leaders, that gives a sense of direction, but also nurtures the culture that enables all of these things to happen. So leaders don't make the culture happen, but they play a strong role in influencing it. And by leadership, what I mean is leadership up and down the organisation when you're in a leadership role, and how that is portrayed. So what we have here is a framework of things that we'd like to ask you about. And the way that we're going to do that is by running a survey, which will open today with the staff newsletter, which comes out this afternoon. So this is a framework, as I say, that we've put together, which could represent the outside view. The survey is designed for us to understand what you think about this, to help us to adjust it and to help us to prioritise what should be in the people strategy. So for each of the 6 elements, we'll seek to understand what the element means to you. We'll give you a definition of each and we'll ask you to comment on it. And we'll also ask you to rate its importance in the people strategy. And that will really, really help us to prioritise things moving forward. The way that we've set up the strategy, the survey rather, it will include some questions that are sort of responses to statements that you tick your agreement to. Others are open text for you to explain how you feel about a particular element. There is no need for you to address all 6 if they're not as important to you. Focus on the ones that are most important to you, if that is what you prefer in how you complete it. And the intention with this is that we gather together themes in terms of what people are telling us about these 6 different areas, and then we feed them back to you via some focus groups that we'll do with staff probably around the beginning of June to investigate this, what we've understood from the survey. So play it back, what it is that we've understood. So that is the element, as Helen said, which looks very specifically at what it will be like to work here. If I could just move on to the next slide. Yeah, we're going to just come back to how will we work. So the element that fits in the middle, as Helen says, that describes the things that we'll need to be doing and be part of our culture, which will enable us to deliver the 3-year strategic plan. We're also starting a process of understanding what should be in this element of the strategy as well. And the way that we're doing this, initially we started it via a conversation last week with the senior management team. And if I could just have the next slide. Yeah, so how this looks is those 4 pillars that Paul talked about earlier as being the key elements of our strategic plan. What we've been looking at, and we'll look at over the next few weeks, is if we're to be successful in delivering these pillars, what will be most important about how we work and how we work together. So there may be things within what we currently do that we do really, really well and we need to do more of. We need to develop it and reinforce it. There could also be things that we could do that might hold us back. And it's really important that we understand what these things are. And that will form part of the other section of the people strategy, which will bring the whole thing together. And the intention will be that after we've been through this process of conversations with SMT and we've completed the survey, that we will be at a point to come back together and look at both elements and the way that they connect to each other through those focus groups that will run in June. So that's how we're going to be developing the various different elements of the people strategy. And at this point, if I could hand back to Helen for how we'll bring it together.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. So rather a busy slide, but if we just start on the top left or the top, they're the two elements of work that Ellie has just talked us through. The how we will work research that started with the SMT and will come through, and the what it will be like, which is largely the survey that Ellie just talked us through as well, which will come together through those focus groups. That will give us an understanding of what the needs are that we need to be trying to address through the people strategy. What we have in the lower half of the diagram are the various options that we have that we can seek to enable and support that culture and that environment that we're seeking to support. So we can look at our resource in our contracts. It will help us to build our skills development program around those things that are important. We can look at how we reward and recognise to both encourage the types of activities that will help the college succeed, but to recognise you in a way that you've fed back, you like to be recognised. There'll be work around career growth and career development that will help align those two needs, and so on. So how we will use the input that you provide us will really help inform what then features as our work around reward and recognition and career paths and leadership development and communication and engagement. Underneath those enablers is equality, and in the people strategy, equality is about ensuring that we take the opportunities as we design new activities, as we update our career paths, that we're thinking about them from an inclusive perspective. We're trying to make them inclusive by design is the phrase, but it means that we're thinking about the variety of needs that we're trying to meet when we put the developments in place. We also need to be taking using data to help inform us, helping us to shape the work as we go forward. So that's how the people strategy will come together. The work Ellie talked about is about identifying the needs. Once we have those needs and we've tested them with you, we'll be able to do some work around developing the enablers that will help support those attributes, behaviours, skills, ways of working that have emerged. Could we move on to the next slide? So whilst I talked there about the way in which equality sits as part of the people strategy, and it's more about inclusivity by design, we have also got some work that we're currently doing around an EDI strategy, and this recognises the EDI as a focus rather than EDI by design. And this is currently being consulted with through our diversity groups and various roles that are involved in EDI. And the 4 key themes that are being consulted on through that work is around diversity in and throughout our communities. That's reflecting our overall diversity within the staff group, but also looking at the level within the hierarchy. So we have a good distribution across the hierarchy of diverse staff members, and also students, although from students that talks more to the attainment perspective. The second theme on the EDI strategy that's being consulted on is around accessibility, inclusivity of our services, our facilities and our estates. And that's looking at how we can remove the barriers so people can partake in our services on an equal footing. So it moves beyond the physical barriers that might be thought of more traditionally into looking at are our services accessible to everybody. The third thread looks more at the behavioural side of things, how we are with each other, how confident we are interacting with different people and appreciating differences, and the mechanisms that we have in place to support when things don't go to plan, and how do we support picking up where there have been instances that have fallen below where we'd like them to be. And the fourth thread is around effective governance and reporting, ensuring that we have the mechanisms to try and bring the quality work together, to prioritise the work in this field, and to understand what difference we're making and what impact we're having by the work we're doing. So although the equality part of the people strategy is more about by design, there is a wider field of work going on within the EDI strategy. And I know that was important in the green paper that was put out over a year ago that has formed the starting point for a lot of this work. Could we move to the next slide then, please? So as Ellie suggested, we have the People Strategy Survey being opened today as part of the newsletter. There's then a number of weeks for you to dip into that survey and to fill out the questions. We'll then consolidate the feedback from that survey, as well as consolidating the feedback from the other thread of research. And we'll be running some focus groups 24th through to the 11th of June to enable us to play back what we think we've heard and to engage you in some more conversation around that, with a view that we'll have some high level themes by the end of June, which we'll take to council for their support and approval beginning of July. And then we'll do some further work on the enablers that I spoke of on the earlier slide that will enable us to have a full launch sometime early in the start of the new academic year. So hopefully you can see how we're trying to allow your voice to be brought in to shape the strategy as we develop it, and that it will be built around both the college's needs to help it deliver the strategic plan, but also your own needs to have a fulfilling career and a great place to work. So that was the final slide, I believe, from me.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, and thank you, Helen. So, you know, as I said at the beginning, we've got our 3-year strategy lined up. We've got those 4 pillars around students, the London demographic, international students, the challenge-led research, and then how we operate. And then underpinning all of that, the environment strategy and the people strategy. And this is now your opportunity to contribute to the thinking about the people strategy. So do engage with it. As Helen said, there'll be more information about this in the staff newsletter that will be coming out today, and look forward to seeing your input to that. We'll pause there and now just see if we've got any questions. I said at the beginning, if you've got a question, you can pop it in the chat, or you can put your hand up and take the floor. So let's just give you a moment to think about that. And I think we've got Suki.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a question about the EDI work that's been going on. I'm a member of lots of different EDI committees within the university at different levels, and I sometimes get confused about how they work together and what the structure is. And I was wondering if there was any document I could be referred to which outlines how the EDI teams interact with each other and what the structures of kind of power within the university are.
Yeah. Thank you, Suki. That's a really good question, and I think you've put your finger on one of the issues that we have with our structure. But I'm going to pass to Helen to just give you some feedback on that.
Yes, thank you, Susie. You're absolutely right, and that is a key part of that 4th element, is understanding how we can bring together the work and have clarity around the different groups, how they relate to each other, how we ensure that representation is there, and also how decision making is clearer to everyone involved. We have a huge amount of work and a huge amount of really passionate and engaged individuals doing EDI work across the college, which is fantastic. You wouldn't want to not have that. However, what we need to look at doing better is bringing it together so we can see the collective impact of our work and enable different groups to understand and have better visibility of what they're doing, so we're not duplicated and we can really draw on the synergies of the various work that's going across. So it's not an answer as such, Susie. We have got a framework of, at least as best we know it, most of the groups that are involved in the EDI work, which maybe Ellie can share. But certainly a big part of the strategy will be trying to understand and unpick how can we use all of that energy that is there to make sure that it's coming together and moving us forwards by addressing exactly how do those different work groups interact with each other and where does decision making get made and priorities set for that matter. So thank you for the question.
Thank you for that question, and Helen, for your answer there. And I think Ellie's just put a comment there in the. Oh, sorry, no, not Ellie. Yeah, we'll share that framework. Sorry, Suki, it's you putting the comment. We'll share that framework with you. But I think if we can simplify things and you know, some of these things have evolved over time and have got quite complex, and I think the lines of reporting and flow of communications don't always work. So we've got an opportunity to review those and really welcome any suggestions as how we can make that work more effective. Any other questions from colleagues? Just give you another moment to stick your hand up or put something in the chat. Question there, or comment from Charlotte. So the comment from Charlotte there, very interesting one, is you know, work going on in systems and technical improvements, and how does that relate to our potentially higher student numbers, and will there be further investment? I think we all recognise that on our systems and processes, and it's not just about the IT, it's the processes that underpin those IT systems. There is more that we can do. We almost need to continue to make a step change in the way our IT systems operate and the way they support us all in our daily lives here on campus. And Mike Johnson's got a strategy for that. Some of it is about making our systems safe and secure, and then there are other areas of priority. I don't know, Mike, if you're on the call, whether you just want to add a couple of comments. Mike Johnson there? Maybe not, but I think at some point we could ask Mike to put something in a newsletter, or indeed come to one of these staff open meetings to talk about the roadmap for investing in our IT systems. But as you'll have seen in the press, you know, the issue of cyber attacks, and there was one at Hertfordshire University just recently. It's a constant threat to us, together with having systems that support us effectively. So I think the point that you're making, Charlotte, about investment in systems is well made, and I think you'll see more of that coming in the future. We've got a question here about any more updates about returning to work for those still working remotely, and possible changes in flexible working that might accompany that. Some big questions there. Clearly, there's been a little lightening of the lockdown. I think there's still an edict to minimise travel, to work at home where you can. I think I'm very conscious, and having met many of you around about on campus, particularly over the summer, working from home is great. It has some real positive benefits, but doing it all the time is a challenge for many of our colleagues, especially when you have partners working from home and children and home education and all the rest of it. It's got its downsides as well as upsides, and we're very keen to have a a debate about what the future of working should look like. I'm talking about longer term now. I think Mari Ennis is leading some work on the professional service side about flexible working and perhaps a series of models that we work through from post-lockdown through to perhaps a couple of years down the road when we've got something that looks more like a steady state. So she's leading that work with professional service colleagues, and I've asked the heads of school to work with Ken Badcock and James Knowles and shortly Tracy Bamra when she joins us to look at the academic side and what flexible working might look like as we go forward there. If you need to be able to, if you need to work on the campus, out of an office, it is possible. It's not completely banned, but there is, a strong desire to remote work if you can. I think a lot of that will change on the 17th of May and then again on the 21st of June, and it will be really great to be able to welcome colleagues back onto campus. We've got a good number of students around on campus and in the area. We believe we have probably just under 1,000 students in halls of residence. There are many students who are actually back in their term time accommodation around Englefield Green and Egham. They'll have been paying rent on those properties even during the lockdown. Many of them have returned, and from time to time you see a good number of them around on the campus, but having said all that, it is still relatively quiet on campus. Just trying to catch up on other comments in the chat. Comment there from Vanessa on EDI committees and the importance of data. I think it's a point well made. Short-term contracts. We've come quite a long way, Joe, on moving people off of short-term contracts. But let me just pass to Helen to give an update on that.
Yes, so I think the short answer to your question, Joe, is absolutely there's space for us to look at what is the appropriate mix of contract types that we're using. And if you remember that busy slide, the far left-hand side talked about resourcing and contracts. So I would certainly see an element of that getting picked up there. We've had some conversations with the trade unions that we're just trying to wrap up around particularly the use of visiting teachers. So there's definitely work ongoing in this area. Paul, if I could just pick back up on Vanessa's point as well. We did talk at this actually within the team earlier this week, that you're absolutely right. Data does underpin a lot of our work on Athena Swan, the Race Equality Charter, and it would be helpful for us to have a more consistent set of data that we're receiving, that we understand what's in it, and it's consistent across the different purposes that we want to use it for. So the same data can underpin the Athena Swan with a gender perspective on it. That same data can then underpin the Race Equality Chart with an ethnicity perspective on it. So it is work in progress, and it is, as Paul said, a point well made. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Helen, and Vanessa. Apologies. I pick up the subtlety of your point now, I think, and it is the burden of the data collection and having it, repeated requests. It is clearly something we need to get away from, and I think a single collection point, as you're suggesting, I think is a great idea. Elaine is asking about teamwork and where that fits in, and of course we are a community, and we want to be more than the sum of the parts, and that's about working as a team. So it's a point that's really well made. I think it's noticeable by its absence, I think is your comment, Elaine. Again, Helen or Ellie, you might want to just comment on that.
Yeah, I think again, it's a really good observation. So the what will it be like element is much more of an individual, much more of a personal set of feedback, which is reflected in those 6 aspects that Ellie talked through. Where I'd see teamwork featuring much more is the other part of the research, when we're talking about how is it we need to work and how do we need to work together in order to deliver the strategic plan. So I'd see more messages around teamwork emerging from that thread. So when we come back to the focus groups, when both of those threads of work come back together again, I think that's when we'll see it. But you're absolutely right. it will feature. It's just not obvious on that slide that Ellie shared, because that bit of the research is much more about our individual needs, what we're looking for from an employment experience.
Thank you. Giannina is asking about the strategy on a page, and yes, certainly we'll get that circulated around. I don't know if Ken is on the call, Ken Badcock, whether you want to say anything about, or indeed Mari, about the publication of the strategy. What we don't want to do is to create pages and pages of text that nobody reads. I think the strategy on the page is a great way of communicating the key ideas. We might want to just tart it up a little bit and make it a little more readable. Mari, do you want to come in on that?
Sure, Paul. Well, I just had a quick look on the intranet. I didn't have time before you asking me just to get the link, but we can sort that out and share that. Obviously, we'll be updating the strategy on a page when we have the sustainability and the people element to add in. And what we're, as you say, what we're trying to do is give a single page summary so that people know what are the key things that we're focusing on. So the document will evolve over the coming months as we bed down on the people element and the sustainability element. Thanks.
Thank you, Mari. And then Hannah's got a question about what do we mean by EDI. I'll ask Helen to comment on that. But while we've got let's go to that.
Okay, thanks, Paul. No, you're absolutely right, Hannah, to pull me up. It's loose language. It's shorthand for things, and you're right. We do tend to talk about equality from a gender and an ethnicity point of view, but no, absolutely, it covers all of the aspects of inclusion, and interestingly, not just those that are covered off by the Equality Act. I think inclusion extends beyond that, so it is in its widest sense. And I will try to be more open with the types of examples I use, so we don't keep focusing on gender and race, because it does go beyond that. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Hannah, for the question. I think that's it on the questions. Thank you for engaging that way. In that way, there've been some really useful questions that have come up there. I hope you got the answers that you wanted there. As ever, we'll continue to get information out through the newsletter and the intranet. Do turn to that as the main source of updates and information, and look forward to seeing you again at the next staff open meeting. So with that, we'll close the meeting. You've got 15 minutes back in your diary, so take advantage of the lovely weather out there, stretch your legs, and I hope the rest of the day goes well for you. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.